the key question that most of us ask ourselves when we're planning for financial freedom and retirement is how much is truly enough. Now, there are a lot of tools and calculators out there that allow you to arrive at a number based on some input parameters of your case, but I thought it'll be useful to provide you a simple way to do these calculations using Excel and showcase various scenarios for you to visualize the same. Before we dive into the details, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. So let's dive in. So here's an Excel sheet that I've created, which we can use to dive into the math. Now, the investment return rate here is the amount of returns that your investments based on your wealth earn. And I've kept it at 10% for now. The inflation rate is how much living costs go up due to inflation, which is about 5% as an example. The wealth at retirement is the number that you're trying to calculate. Let me make this 100 for now to make it easy. So I've kept it as $100 just to make it easy to discuss examples, but you could always change that and play around with that. Yearly spend is how much you're spending per year after retirement, and the key part is the spend wealth ratio, which is the withdrawal rate. So you're spending 4% of your wealth every year. Again, these are just numbers. I'll put the link to the Excel sheet down below and you can play around with this. So how does it work? Let's say at the start of year 0 of your retirement, your wealth is 100. This is your wealth at retirement. You gain 10% every year based on your investments, and it's 110. You spend 4%, actually 4 that year, and you end up with 106 at the end of the year. And then your next year, your wealth starts at that number. You gain some returns. You spend something which is increased by inflation, which in this case hasn't changed much. You'll see that it changes as time goes on, and this is the wealth at the end of the year, and so on. So you can see these calculations here. Now let's look at some scenarios. Let's assume, for now, let's say your wealth at retirement is about $100, right? Let's say you are earning as much, your investments earn as much as the inflation rate, so it's equal to the inflation rate. So now your wealth will last for 25 years, as you can see, because you're spending 4%, you're making as much as inflation. Hypothetically, if your investments got 0 returns, it should not happen, but hypothetical scenario, then your money runs out much earlier at 16 years. Now, what if you make slightly more than inflation? Let's say at 8%. Now your wealth lasts 48 years, which is pretty good. Let's say you make even more. Let's say you're able to make 9% on your investments. This actually lasts 50 years and more. So you can see it's actually increasing, right? So this is a good scenario. Hopefully you'll never run out of money. Now let's go and visualize this in a graph. So let's look at this scenario where your investment is making nothing, right? And I've plotted a graph of wealth versus time here, right? Wealth on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. So if you look at this scenario, your wealth runs out in about 15-16 years. It's very easy to visualize. The scenario where you're making as much as inflation, your wealth runs out in 25 years. Now let's look at the scenario where you're making 8% returns. Now your wealth runs out in about just below 50 years. But as you can see, your wealth starts declining at a certain point here. Let's say we talked about, look at the scenario, we're making 9%. In this case, you can see your wealth almost never runs out. It's increasing even at the 50th year after retirement. It's increasing, and this is the kind of scenario that you want, because you can be confident that your wealth doesn't really run out. How do you kind of calculate and play around with these? Let's say you're confident that you can make 10% returns on investment after your retirement. Now, what you need to calculate is what would be your wealth required at retirement. With this, 100 being your wealth, as you can see, you almost never run out of it. But let's say you have only 50. Your wealth is only 50 at this point. As you can see, this is really not enough. It's running out after 20 years. Let's say you say that you have 75 at retirement, right? $75. As you can see now, it's lasting nearly 50 years. Pretty good. So maybe if we go to 80, now this is our ideal case scenario where you never run out of money. So based on how much you're confident of making after retirement in terms of investments on your wealth and the inflation rate that you feel confident about, you can actually arrive at the wealth you need where you pretty much don't really run out of money. Now, a few caveats here. The first one is you should not include, say, the house that you own own and you live in this wealth, because it's an illiquid asset. If you have to sell it, you need to buy another house or you need to pay rents. It's not really something that you can include in your investments. Now, so let's say you expect to not earn anything after retirement. So for example, you're not going to work for anything, you're not going to earn anything after retirement, then you should keep a bit of a buffer. So at least you need to have wealth which is at a happy case of graph like this. But suppose you intend to achieve financial freedom, but you still intend to work, let's say, part-time jobs or do something that's going to bring in some income. You can afford to take some risk. For example, this graph might be okay because it's lasting 45 years, or at least let's say 75 might be okay because it's almost lasting 50 years. I think it's important to tweak these parameters based on the risk that you can take and based on what you expect to do after retirement. So it's important to understand for yourself and be confident in your calculations and answer the key question of how much is enough. I hope this was helpful for you to be able to answer that question confidently. If you have any questions, please add comments down below, like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.